always, or is it occasional?
It just presents itself probably about once every 4 or 5 months, and then it
When you go
seems
to school.
completely unpredictable. And then sometimes she said, I just feel fine. And she said, other times, I feel like I'm just gonna go down. Just boom.
Right, which is scary.
Oh, what we think.
Does it come on suddenly?
You can't.
That's really scary.
Especially if you don't recognize the symptoms, which she's now,
You've gotten good at doing it, I'm sure.
actually it's one of the reasons I don't travel much.
If she calls you from, you can get a job site,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And she doesn't drive anymore.
I didn't know she, okay, so that's.
Because it's just
too
too
risky.
chancy. So, we get one.
And like most of her clients, she just takes the tab to, right?
No,
Or they come with her.
we got an Uber. She has an Uber account.
Right.
It's pretty simple, but
Well, she charges.
yes.
Anyways. And then a lot of, you guys have gotten to the point where you did a lot of shopping with her, right? Like big hunts?
No, well, when she goes out for her antique business, I'll go along with her, but that's the problem with this stuff, is it sort of cuts into your independence.
Right.
Well, I actually think that she had, a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, she was at the design center, and we think had an episode where she just blacked out. And she fell, and she's got bridge work in her upper. She knocked that completely out, and it was $23,000 to get it replaced. And it was like, I mean, not only I was out of town when all this happened, and when I came back, I said, she took pictures of all this stuff, so she had put the dentist. Anyway, just for a month ago, she finally had it all
Sorted
situated,
out.
it was all done. But it was a year and a half, almost 2 years, and it was, nothing is covered by insurance. I said, well, we just put a small card in the mouth.
Right.
I said, so let's not do that again. But it's funny because this last week she had 2 days when she said, I just feel like crap. I just didn't want to.
You don't want to push yourself with it.
The last word she's so great. This is bizarre. It's bizarre. And they don't know. They don't know. They don't know. Most of the doctors tell you, well, you got it.
This is the 7:15 a.m. FEMA briefing, live to Pool 6. Everyone got it.
Just on Fox, by the way.
That's just fine. Anything else that was already early. That's awesome.
You know. Okay, I guess I know.
Famous person agree.
Don't know where the camera came from.
Well, he probably
It's
is
not major
running the
or
house
Colonel
these
or a
days,
general, it's
so.
just a captain. We get promoted eventually.
Any daughter or son? Oh, she did. Where do they live?
I live in North Carolina.
You guys have, is it?
Just a little south of Fayetteville.
So it's,
It's a long drive, but it's here, almost to South Carolina.
so you're at like 10, 11.
No, not that quite. It always takes us seven.
Ah.
We stopped.
So that's, with two people, it's a very reasonable drive. Not that your wife has to drive.
He was just up here.
Oh, really?
He was at our house there, I came up for it. So he was 3 rows.
This past weekend had 4 reviews for one night. A lot. 13, 9, 8, and 2. Oh, yeah. Big boy. He's actually, attitude is less annoying than my 9-year-old.
That's been.
Darling, precious child. I love you.
Well,
Just
yeah,
evil.
it's a
Like,
different
just
number, but-
mean.
Oh, way out there?
Yeah.
You just park out right out here?
On the opposite side.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
overnight.
Yeah, I just did, yeah, because I couldn't find the number on
At some
it.
point,
Yeah.
Thomas Guy too.
Oh, you paid, yeah.
Yeah.
I paid on the number that was posted on
Right.
the,
So we didn't know about insurance.
and it's different from the number on the app.
Toilet flooding, it's
Really?
Yeah.
whether or not
What is it? Yeah.
pay someone to fix this,
I'll just double pay.
do it.
Mine was, so the machine
I
is
still don't know if I should go to the
21332.
hospital or not sometimes.
And this one, and it was 21331.
Oh,
That's the one, well, on the app, that's what it says. All right, let me pay both then.
I, maybe,
21331.
21332.
For a storm coverage looks
Two.
better than it could have been, though.
Where and who did you wind up with?
Fort Lauderdale.
Lauderdale.
She was a nanny for at least a day, I don't know, still there though.
Yeah, see, I don't even find that.
I mean, they had dinner at a restaurant, which I
Yeah,
feel like
that's big.
is, Rafini was eating
Or
canned
where?
chicken last night, so.
I did get your name. We had nothing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, so that's what I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
Don Lake.
I'm sure I'll just pay both sides of the street.
See, that's not, that's not, that's not.
Right, that's like
Already showed
a
up.
side.
For Johnson.
Right.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello,
How are
I'm
you?
Michelle Ralston at the FEMA News Desk. So I'll be checking your credentials this morning.
I'll vouch for you.
Okay, well, I got this thing. Hopefully that's enough.
Oh,
Hi.
From you,
it's in your bag.
No,
I do, I have that actually. Here, that'll, yeah, shit.
Sure.
Get that pass muster. Pretty good. It's okay.
Okay.
Not necessary.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, good morning.
Your CBS school
CBS.
crew back there.
CBS.
I would love to, but we frown on that.
CBS also.
If you got one of those,
We're having some printer challenges this morning, but I should have the release.
Yeah.
Also. Hi, good morning.
Hey, what's up? What's going on?
Just excited to be here.
Yeah.
What breakfast you can skip?
Spare.
Don't have the outside tail steak out. That's a victory in itself.
That's, well, how's it telling you? Sensitive tells they got to kill you.
How does he do it?
And it says, get what I'm going to do. Why is this? I don't want you to try. Well, here's the time. There's the only one there.
There's some delicate negotiation going on with the
Certainly not personally.
right now.
And how it works for
Well, they
everybody.
want anybody that should just say go.
Well, I might have flying drones. Cool. I mean, drones are cool.
Training or you already know?
Oh,
I feel like since they.
There's a ton of shit that will stay outside flying drones for 3 days.
Came back to ground.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Fine.
Daylight.
That's pretty cool.
I think with the, I would not know that.
Oh, people turn it down because of the
Really?
ultimate blue.
Yeah. Get out of town.
But also like
Train.
also
Train every night.
Right.
Well,
And also, you know, when it actually comes up.
Yeah, it'll still be valuable.
Bring us anything that just
Okay, so you pull up
Are
the
we
tripod.
sending?
No, because the, it's online, that's why.
That's one of the, other body would actually.
For temperature.
Yeah, I think it's a little
You're looking on the corner all the time.
Right. And then everybody can see it. It's saying,
Oh,
like,
In order to have like balance.
Sure.
if you're down there, there's a one-man band,
Hi, good morning.
and they're doing
Oh, thank you.
hours. No, you can't go across the courtyard, like, right down to
Two strikes, yeah.
kids who cross the courtyard to the back. He said, because they'll come and take. Well, and the Swedish contributing to the Swedish culture.
Right. I was glad you did it.
Yeah, so.
I heard.
And Reggie too.
Yeah.
Billy's buddy got hired.
Said we were gonna accept labor. Right.
Never know.
It's the same thing when you're cleaning.
This is the only.
Cameraman, I can't read, so
You
you.
can't.
Yeah.
You just hit buttons.
I just hit buttons.
You know, I was gonna say something.
We
but-
color
Yeah,
coded.
that's great. It's
Driving.
a well-known fact.
Alright.
You get. Get what you paid for.
That's right.
That's right.
Like, you get less than.
Wow, I know.
So when he got his wing, I put a piece in it.
Like you just have like.
It'll get better when it's going. But there's youth manual order that you're looking for the job I never had.
I don't know if that was right. Maybe whether or not I have
This is just, well, we
Yeah,
can
that's
ask
one
him.
thing to know. I tried to provide information.
You did. He gave us those song, it's right on the water.
And then, log in after a reason.
Sorry.
Yep. Around the corner.
Reasonable size.
This is just all working out swell.
I've been over to the left, well, I've been. Yeah. I know, that was right.
Two minutes. 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Mr.
Oh, just me. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll provide an update. Acting Secretary Duke, Administrator Long, and Chris Krebs, our senior official performing the duties of the Undersecretary from the Department of Homeland Security, will provide you an update. Just to give you an idea, they both have commitments on the backside, so we'll have about 25 minutes with you. So, thanks.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us to continue as we continue to respond to Hurricane Irma. Our number one concern today is with saving lives. The U.S. Coast Guard, Customs and Border Protection, and Department of Defense have deployed significant assets to the area to assist in search and rescue efforts. We are very pleased that the weather is allowing this effort on search and rescue. We are constrained by, and our bases of operation are more limited than our response to Hurricane Harvey. We are working to get as many aircraft in the air as possible. I urge everyone impacted by the storm to continue to pay attention to your state and local officials. They will let you know when it's safe to return home. Be patient. The federal government effort is working closely with our state and local partners in our response and recovery efforts. I would like to thank President Trump and Vice President Pence for their attention to this storm and their concern for communities that are affected. The White House and the entire cabinet have been very supportive of the first responders and the survivors of Hurricane Irma. A storm of this magnitude needs a team effort, and we've seen tremendous response from our federal partners. Nearly 22,000 federal personnel are already on the front lines, and more continue to deploy. We face a long and challenging road ahead, but the Department of Homeland Security, our federal, state, tribal, and local partners will continue to stand with the people affected by the storm. Whether you are in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Puerto Rico, or the U.S. Virgin Islands, we are here for you, and we are here for the long haul. While we are ramping up operations in Florida, for those of you in Texas and Louisiana affected by Harvey, we are still with you. I actually spoke to Governor Abbott yesterday and will continue to support the state rebuilding efforts. I would now like to introduce Chris Krebs, the Assistant Secretary for Infrastructure Protection at DHS, who is currently running our National Protection and Programs Directorate. He'll talk to you about power, water, and communications in Florida. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Very briefly, on the ground in Florida, we are looking at a little over 5 to 6 million customers without power. That translates to about 15 million people without power. Department of Homeland Security is working very closely with the Department of Energy and the local utilities to get the crews back in there, do damage assessments, clean up debris, and hang new lines. I do ask that everyone have patience. This is going to take some time to restore, and in some circumstances, it will be a situation about rebuilding. Hurricane force winds can significantly damage infrastructure. Those crews are still down there right now, getting a sense of what is going on the ground. Now, with power out, power pretty much drives everything. Lights are out. There may be impacts on local water and wastewater treatment facilities. Most of those facilities should have generator and fuel supplies for a number of days. However, it is a priority. Once it's safe to re-enter, it is a priority to get those electricity crews back in on the ground. Communications is also an issue, particularly down in the Virgin Islands, but in Florida, there is some cell service disruption and maybe some wireline disruption as well. Again, same thing applies. As soon as it's safe to re-enter, those crews are going to be back in there. They should be doing damage assessments late yesterday and into today. Last thing I would add is that Hurricanes Harvey and Irma are linked. With Harvey, we had a significant amount of the nation's refining capacity offline, as well as distribution through some of the pipelines through the southeast. As a result, there may be some fuel supply shortages throughout the southeast. That's why last week the Secretary issued the Jones Act waiver to allow easier distribution of fuel throughout some of those ports throughout. So I do ask everyone to have patience. We're getting on this quickly, and we'll be here to answer questions. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. So it's very clear to all of us that the president's goal is to take care of people, and this is a unique event compared to what Harvey was. Harvey's damage areas were confined, to about 50 counties within Texas and a few in Louisiana. This one's complex because of the multiple states involved. We also have the Seminole tribe that comes directly to FEMA for support, and then also our partners in the U.S. Virgin Islands as well as Puerto Rico. So during a complex event like this, it's very important to double down on communications, and what we're doing is to make sure that we have clear lines of communication, not only with our governors, but the state divisions of emergency management as well, including our tribal partners in the Seminole tribe. So we will continue to do that. As the Secretary and Chris Krebs are creating an event, it's going to take some time to allow people back into their homes, particularly in the Florida Keys. If you look at what happened in Florida, obviously Monroe County took the brunt of the hit, and a majority of the homes there impacted in some ways, with several of them destroyed and many more with so we're having to go down and make sure that it's a safe place for people to return, so that we don't have loss of life after Irma passes through. So the bottom line is that later today I will be headed to Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands to meet with both governors to make sure that we're on the correct pathway to recovery there. Obviously, power restoration is one of the biggest goals, along with and power restoration is the largest goal right now in Puerto Rico. There were over 1 million people without power. We've made a lot of progress, and that's down to around 300,000. That will continue to improve. For the U.S. Virgin Islands, we're directly working with Governor Mapp to understand his issues as well. Obviously, we want to make sure that safety and security is upheld, and we're continuing to work with him to roll in military police through our National Guard partners to those islands to ensure safety and security. We're also pushing a lot of commodities forward. We've established air bridges through our partners with the DoD and the Navy with the ships that are offshore there. And we continue to understand the life sustainment missions to support our partners in the Virgin Islands. Moving to the continental United States, the President, as you all know, moved very quickly to put forward presidential disaster declaration. It's very important, specifically in Florida right now. The counties under individual assistance declarations, there's quite a few, so I want to read those off. Broward County, Palm Beach, Clay, Duval, Flagler, Putnam, St. John's, Charlotte, Collier, Hillsborough, Lee, Manatee, Miami-Dade, Monroe, Pinellas, Sarasota. These counties, right now, if you're a citizen in those counties, you can go to disasterassistance.gov to begin registering for assistance if you've received damages and are having hardship. And in some cases, the first line of defense is file your insurance. When you're allowed to get back home, file your insurance. Not only your personal insurance, but also through the NFIP program, the National Flood Insurance Program. If you're a policyholder, once you return home, please, call your private insurer to activate that policy if you've had damage, and we can begin the process to have money flowing to help you in that regard. The other thing here is that we're also watching the continuing situation in Jacksonville. Overnight, Jacksonville and the areas around the St. Johns River were heavily impacted. We're still conducting some life safety missions in and around that area because of the flooding. We were very aware of it last night and continuing to support our state and local partners there. Again, this issue is passing through. There's large-scale power outages and almost 1 million people in Georgia without power today as well. But we have been working with our partners at the Department of Energy to pre-stage power crews, not only in Florida, but all over the southeastern United States. But let me reiterate, it takes a long time for this infrastructure to come back up. It may take multiple days, if not weeks, in some areas, as we've been saying before the storm hit. So with that, one final graphic that we have up here is our force laydown to show how dynamic this response is. But as I have said, and as the Secretary reiterated, it's all about communication, clearly identifying how to support our state and local partners, and that's exactly what's taking place today as we start to turn the corner and provide a road to recovery. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So scientists say these massive storms only get warmer in warmer water linked to climate change. The Department of Defense has said that the U.S. must pay closer attention to climate change. As the head of the agency who has to respond to these sort of massive storms that require your staff to be on 24/7 for days at a time and essentially wipe out the budget, do you feel that the government needs to focus on climate change in a broader way at this point following these storms?
I think the government needs to definitely focus on disaster resiliency twofold. Disaster resiliency, the only way we achieve that is that we have to create a true culture of preparedness within our citizenry. We have to help them understand their true vulnerabilities based on where they dwell and where they work. And it's not just getting supplies for 3 days, as many people are learning how important that is. It's also having the savings account for 3 to 6 months to overcome simple emergencies as well as the disaster, to activate insurance policies and everything else. When it comes to the infrastructure side, I think we do have a long way to go. Local governments and state governments need to consider, best practices when it comes to land use planning in the future. Regardless of what causes disasters, it's our job, within the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA to manage the consequences.
How important do you think it is, besides preparedness for these disasters, to focus on what is potentially causing these really massive storms?
I mean, we have to understand, and we have to look at data to make meaningful decisions on the way forward. So I think we can all agree that we do that on a daily basis. That's how we estimate how much power is going to be knocked out or how many people are going to be influenced. But here again, it goes back to the only way we become resilient as a nation is we have to create that true culture of preparedness within our citizenry, which we do not have. And then we also have to look at how we go forward when it comes to infrastructure protection. Yeah.
I think it is important. We live in a changing world, and as the FEMA administrator said, that we always have to look at not just the response, but the preparedness and the resilience. And I think it's important that as we come together as a country, we looked at the changes in our world and make sure, both in planning and response, that we are adapting appropriately.
And I mean, I hear you saying about the response and preparedness, but what about the cause? How important do you think it is for government to be focused in on the cause? What might be behind these massive storms, or fueling them?
The data, I don't know what it particularly indicates. We haven't had a major storm like this in quite a while. We knew this was going to be a hard hurricane season. It was predicted by NOAA. So I would think that our sister agencies in NOAA and others are looking at whether this is an anomaly year or a trend year, and I think it's important to know that, and we will continue working with them as they look at the data and try to determine is this a year of anomaly or a year of trend.
When will you guys go to Florida? I know you're going to Puerto Rico now, but
we likely will be going later this week. What's important is, because of the path of this storm, we are just beginning search and rescue in earnest today, and so it's important that that be the singular focus. So we believe that with that starting at sunrise this morning, we should be able to be in the area safely without disrupting any search and rescue later this week.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
What's the security picture down in Puerto Rico and Florida? Are you hearing reports of any looting or any other crimes going on?
Obviously, there is some social media trending when it comes down to the United States Virgin Islands, but I've been in close contact with Governor Mapp, and we are helping him to address some localized issues, but there is not widespread security issues across those islands. So we need to, we have to deconflict some of the rumors that are there. But as I said earlier, Governor Mapp, we're helping him to facilitate mutual aid with our National Guard partners to bring in military police to make sure that we maintain safety and security. And I will be there over the next 48 hours to put my eyes on the ground to make sure that we're making progress.
What's the visibility like in the Florida Keys? Do you know how many people might be needing search and rescue? What do you know about what's going on there?
So look, I always let me clarify. Anytime I start to give specific numbers, they're going to change the minute we walk out that door. So some of the initial estimates are, and this is why we ask people to evacuate largely from storm surge, 25% of the houses initially have been destroyed and 65% have major damage. Basically every house in the Keys was impacted in some way or another. This is why we ask people to leave. Regarding fatalities, that's up to the county coroners. I don't want to get into that number because it's honestly like chasing rabbits.
You have aircraft up looking for people to see if there's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our partners at the United States Coast Guard, DOD assets, other partners we have Customs and Border Patrol out of the Department of Homeland Security. There are many that are supporting this mission.
As I said in my opening comments, this is a more complicated response because of the peninsula and the islands. So we are partnering with DOD. DOD has provided some sea assets, aircraft carriers that can be used for landing and refueling. What we're trying to do is get the cycle time shorter. So while we have assets, we have over 40 helicopters from Coast Guard operational now. It is a more complicated response than when you have refueling and landing right nearby. So we are vigilant and working on it. That is the focus of today.
Yeah.
Time for one more. Haven't started yet, right?
I'm sorry?
Air rescues haven't started yet in the Keys, right?
Yes, they have, but this is different. So in portions, yes. I mean, obviously air rescues have happened, particularly in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and as not only our Florida National Guard's heavily involved, they've been providing rescues, but this is different than Harvey. This is not a flood with standing water. Storm surge comes in, inundates, destroys, and then quickly recedes. So in many cases, you're not going to see all of the helicopters that are necessarily needed. We're not plucking people off of their houses and different things. This is not nearly as big a swiftwater rescue issue as Harvey was. So these two storms are dramatically different. And just because you don't see a helicopter doesn't mean we're not actively putting forward the missions.
I also wanted to end with thanking our industry partners to help with evacuations, especially from the islands. We had Delta have a charter flight evacuating Americans. Similarly, in Harvey, Southwest Airlines helped us with some of the evacuations out of the area and others. So I wanted to take this moment to thank industry partners for their support, too.
Yep. And then one final message again, like Harvey, the whole community is going to have to come around the southeastern United States and our partners in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, as well as the Seminole tribe. The whole community needs to be involved. Get involved at infoad.org. And again, activate your insurance policies if you've had damage, and go to disasterassistance.gov if you've been impacted as well. Thank you, folks.